We've all heard the saying,
more money, more problems.
especially if you were watching MTV in 1997. While I agree with that American proverb, I also think this one is true. More responsibility, more problems. Or if you fancy sounding intelligent, more responsibility, more problems. Several years ago, my wife and I went to see my favorite comedian, Brian Regan, in Austin at the Moody Theater. It was fantastic. And I think he was trying out a new joke that apparently didn't get the laughs that he thought it would, because I can't seem to find it anywhere else on YouTube to show you. So if you find it, let me know in the comments below. But here is what he said to the best of my memory. You know, I'd hate to be president. All you do is you deal with problems. Really, really hard problems all the time. I can't imagine waking up every day to someone saying, excuse me, Mr. President, we have some problems, some really, really big problems. I would eventually just end up shouting back at them, why don't you figure it out for a change? It's true though. Presidents face problems like you and I can't imagine. Whether you like whoever it is currently in the White House or not,
Eat some chocolate chip.
it is our duty to pray for their leadership. They're in an office of the highest earthly responsibility, so it comes at no surprise that they also deal with the hardest earthly problems. I think God gives us great grace in that as we grow up, our responsibilities grow with us, giving us a chance to develop our leadership and our problem-solving capacity incrementally. We learn to build kickball teams in the 3rd grade so that we can grow into building businesses when we're 30. We engage in low-stakes leadership while we're young so that we can better engage and lead when the stakes are high later in life. I'll never forget when I got my first full-time ministry job in Prescott, Arkansas. There's Prescott getting a shout out 2 videos in a row now. I would just sit in my office behind my desk with my phone on it and just wish that someone would call me on the phone. I'd hear the phone ring at the front desk. Our admin would answer it and say, yes, let me transfer you to him. And then I would just wait for my phone to ring. But it very rarely did. It usually went to the senior pastor, and I would sit there wishing that I was important enough for a phone call. Now I look back on that moment and think, you poor, naive
idiot.
Phone calls normally mean problems, and you should have enjoyed the good old days when the biggest problem that you faced was what video game are you going to play when you get off of work. But as I grew into more responsibility there and at other places since then, my phone calls, my problems to solve, they have also increased. More responsibility, more problems. I used to wonder, as problems became more frequent and more difficult to solve, will I ever catch a breather? It just seems like it's one thing after another. At work, it's this, then it's that. At home, it's this, then it's that. This week, it's the dishwasher is out, and so you're hand washing dishes and juggling making a large purchase and figuring out, should I hire the professional to install it, or should I save 50 bucks and do it myself and hope for the best? And then the next week, a staff member at church takes a job at a new place and you're scrambling to cover their responsibility. You're breaking the news to the church and you're starting the process of hiring all over again, and it's never fun. More responsibilities, more problems. Shouldn't life just be easy? No problems? Especially if you're following God and doing things His way? Can I tell you, that's just not the way it is. I was reading through the book of Nehemiah the other day, and I was stunned by the number of problems that he had to deal with. Now, if you're not familiar with Nehemiah, he was a Jewish man who directly served the king of the Persian Empire. He wasn't just some nameless bureaucrat. He was face to face with the king on a daily basis, and they knew each other really, really well. Long story short, the Persian king commissions Nehemiah to return to Jerusalem, become its chief governor, rebuild its defensive wall, and jumpstart its economy. You would think, with the calling of God and the commissioning of the most powerful ruler on earth at the time, Nehemiah would have had smooth sailing.
That was easy.
Nope. People inside the city opposed him. People outside the city from rival areas opposed him. He had conflict between this group and that group. He had some people that just never got on board with the vision. People discouraged him. People threatened him. And even the people who were on his side grew weary with the work and wanted to give up. It was problem after problem and crisis after crisis. Do you know what this teaches me? Don't let the presence of problems discourage you. Problems happen, and they are not a sign that you're not doing something God has called you to do. Often, they're the opposite. They're a sign that you're doing exactly what God is calling you to do. Let me give you an example from Nehemiah chapter 6. After the outside opposition tries to lure him outside the city for an assassination attempt that's disguised as a meeting, Nehemiah says this, "I'm engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working and come and meet with you?" He remains focused on what he is supposed to do, not being distracted by his detractors. Then he writes this in his memoirs. They were just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. So I continued the work with even greater determination. He used their opposition to fuel his focus for the mission that God gave him. What they intended for discouragement, Nehemiah used for encouragement. And when the project was completed, this is what he noted. When our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized this work had been done with the help of our God. You've probably heard the saying, success is the best revenge. Well, we're supposed to leave that up to God, so I can't really get behind that one. But here's what I do know. Perseverance, sticking to what God has called you to do despite all the opposition, that is the best obedience. It's choosing God's voice over the voices of critics. It's saying, I fear God, not people. Let me summarize it this way. Follow God, expect problems, take courage, and keep going. Life is not going to be glassy smooth. As your responsibilities grow, you become an adult, you have a family, you take on leadership positions, etc., your problems will grow too. But God has been preparing you for this moment your whole life. Face problems with courage and keep going. Paul said this, let us not get tired of doing good, for we will reap at the proper time if we don't give up. So don't give up. Thanks for watching. Adios.